Yes, guys, welcome back to another live stream. If you guys haven't been living under a rock for the last 6 hours, you lot would have heard the news that Frank Lampard is officially sacked as Chelsea manager. I'm not even sure if it was done by mutual consent or anything, but we know the news by now. The man, the legend, is out of the door. As we say, I do want to throw this immediately from the start, same way we do for all of these lives. All due respect to Frank Lampard, the legend, Frank Lampard, the player, and to an extent, Frank Lampard, the coach, as well, because we've said on numerous of these streams that if Frank Lampard was to get sacked, if he was to leave, he leaves the club in an amazing shape. And depending on where the next manager leaves us, you could look at Frank Lampard as an amazing transitional manager that could be looked at as the Ranieri like of managers, one that's set the foundations for another manager to go and take us on a big title charge. So all due respect to Frank Lampard, the player, the coach, the legend, regardless, but this was the decision that needed to be made. I'm going to go around the panel first before we do start this video. I also want to say, if you guys haven't done so already, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. Check out Worldwide Chelsea, check out Lawrence's channel as well. The links are in the description below. I would have put them in the title, but it's literally too big, this title, to go through the amount of topics that we're going to be discussing in this video. Vitmus, I see you as well. If you want to jump on the stream as well, please do. I'll gladly send you a link as well. But Sadiq, it's been a few hours. We've been able to let the news settle in for a little bit now. What are your thoughts on Frank Lampard finally being sacked as Chelsea manager?
I mean, we expected it, but I just didn't think it would be today, fam. You know what I mean? After a Luton win, just got to deep it. Like, how can it just happen out of the blue? Were you asleep? I was asleep.
Bro, my dad came in, like, kicking my door down. He's like, bro, you want to wake up, your manager's going to get sacked. Like, if my dad didn't wake me up, I would have woken up now to the news.
That's what I'm saying. Because my cousin, who doesn't even watch football, hollered me about it, saying all these group chats are talking about it. I was like, what? And then,
I went on YouTube, right? I see Monsters already live doing a Lampard sack video, and I'm still groggy and everything. It's like, no way has this guy been sacked. And I woke up at like 11:29 as well. So imagine the next minute I'm checking my phone. The announcements literally come up as like, oh shit, the man's actually been sacked. Raw. Because we expected this after the Leicester game. We didn't expect this straight after the Luton game. The Luton game actually left us in a good note. It was leaving us a bit more optimistic for the Wolves game because we were seeing a different formation, a different level of intensity, a different way of playing. And it left us a little bit more optimistic as well. What were your thoughts?
It was to me, it was to Alex. Sorry, I didn't hear. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that was to you. We were just talking about the Luton game and the way that left us going into the Wolves match.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think giving the captaincy to Mount was probably his last message, isn't it? Because I don't think Mason Mount should be Chelsea captain in the future, if you know what I mean. I think it's too early to be talking about these things, and I felt like some of the players probably knew that it was probably going, in my opinion. The training was moved from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. as well, I think it was. So, yeah, I mean, it had to be done. When you look at the top 4 positions that we want, we need to start winning games now. So a choice had to be made now before the Feb fixtures, 100%.
Damn right, exactly that. That was the main thing I was talking about since the Man City game, where my mind was leaning more and more towards Lampard. That was like, we're cool. I was patient. I wanted to wait until the Spurs game because, like you said, the fixtures in February were ridiculous. We had an easy few games with Sheffield United, Newcastle, and the Barnsley game in the Cup. And then you go straight into Southampton away. You go into Atletico away, Manchester United at home, Leeds United away, Everton at home. Ridiculous run of games. You also have Liverpool away straight after the second leg of the Champions League, depending on if we beat Barnsley or not. Of course, we're going to beat Barnsley, but depending on the Barnsley result. It was a mad run of games, and the run into the end of the season was looking peak as well. Arsenal at home, Leicester City at home, Manchester City away, and Aston Villa away as our final 4 games of the season. We couldn't really afford to take these sorts of risks. Oh, no. Yeah, that one was to you as well, but then we're going to move to Alex.
I'm so sorry. My connection's a bit...
Yeah, it's cool.
Apologies. But, yeah, it's very important that we start getting this win and run. Obviously, I thought maybe the new manager comes in for the Luton game to try understand what's going to be happening. I don't think he's going to get everything that he wants to be done this season. I think he's going to have to try push it out until the end of the season and come back stronger with his tactics for the following season. I think now it's just about trying to close up everything and make sure we try to get top 4.
Yeah, same way I want to say as well. Big up 230 of you, man, locked in with us for this live stream. Big up all you, man. Hit the like and subscribe button if you guys haven't done so already. I'm going to go to Alex next, bro. Like, I want to say the same question to you that I said to Sadiq. It's been a couple hours now. We've let the sacking really sink in now. We're starting to feel a bit more normal again. What are your thoughts?
Look, I've been coming on here a few weeks now. Like, I haven't been happy with the performances on the pitch, but at the same time, it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction for me to want him out. I've been expressing my discontent with how we've been playing, and I said back in October when everyone was getting carried away that we were riding our luck, and it's not as if I've just hopped the other side of the fence as soon as we've gone on a bad run. And yeah, honestly, I was a bit shocked to see it happen today, because I thought, it'd be gone straight after the Leicester game. But obviously, you had the Luton game yesterday, albeit an FA Cup game. We put in a decent performance, and he tried something different. I thought, maybe that's a sign of maybe they're willing to give him a bit more time. But at the end of the day, it wasn't to be. And yeah, it's hard to say that this hasn't been coming for a while. To be honest, that's the sort of role this being a Chelsea manager is. It's a cutthroat job. It's very rarely do we really see loyalty. Is what's it rival fans label the position of Chelsea manager poison chalice. So
that's a name I haven't heard in a while, to be honest.
Yeah, but that's the sort of that's what you're dealing with as a Chelsea manager, no matter who you are. So,
exactly that, but that's also part of the ruthlessness of Chelsea. That's the stuff we wanted to see going into this game anyway.
Yeah, of course, but this is what I mean. Frank himself would have known what pressure this the job as manager would have. I mean, he himself as a player played under ample managers at Chelsea. I think he came when Ranieri was in charge of Chelsea. Played under Mourinho, Avram Grant, Benitez, Villas-Boas. Even short-term managers like Ray Wilkins, RIP, and a few others. So he would have known what he was signing up for, and it's sad it had to end up like this, because we all want him to do well, right? No matter what our position was, whether we thought he would turn it around or whether we wanted a different manager, we all wanted him to do well. So it's not as if we're like trying to lambast him out of the club, with some sort of hatred, say. But yeah, it was kind of inevitable in the end. But yeah, I'll never forget what he did last season. Don't get it twisted. I mean, I know some people are going to have a go at me because I said I wanted him out, but I was one of his biggest supporters last season, and I was more than happy with what that guy achieved with, let's face it, limited resources. So I'll have the utmost respect for Frank Lampard, always a Chelsea legend. And, other than what I've said this season, he's been a good transitional manager as well.
Yeah, and that's the one main point that we can all sit and agree on, though. The first season was calm. We had no problems with that. And also the team's left in a perfect place. The first question I do want to ask, now I feel like we're in a point where we can really start to delve into this. We are going to be looking through the Athletic's recent quotes about Frank Lampard's sackings, because there is a lot to talk about that. There's a lot of outside factors, some of them that we didn't even notice until today, some of them that we kind of had a little bit of an inkling of an idea to, but which has just been confirmed. But there's a lot to chat about in this video. And the first thing I want to say as well, and it's about Frank Lampard's initial signing in general. The question I want to ask, this will go around the entire panel. Now that we have hindsight in mind and that we've seen the end result of Frank Lampard's reign, are we going to sit here and look at it and say that the signing of Frank Lampard in general was just a big PR move to try and help steady the ship with a manager that the fans wouldn't put too much pressure on? Sadiq, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I feel obviously with the transfer ban, especially, man, I thought Chelsea were kind of in a bad position as an image. As a football club, it was looking really, really bad. And they brought in Petr Cech, they brought in around Ashley Cole, Frank Lampard. The list goes on. And I thought, they're trying to cover it up. And don't get, like Alex said, Frank Lampard done a very, very good job in the first season. He got the Champions League. That was the most important thing for me. I didn't think he overachieved. I think he done what he needed to do. But it was a bit surprising to hear some of the things behind closed doors. Obviously, we know, the Kepas and stuff like that. But if you listen to him in the press conference, he said, like, he always not backed the players, but he didn't say there was problems behind the scenes, if you know what I mean. And I don't think he wanted the players to be blamed for anything. Like, he went at the journalists, but he didn't blame the players or anything. So I felt maybe the media trying to push it a bit, kind of. But regardless, Kepa talking about tactics, I was a bit, shocked with that, in my opinion. But with a new manager coming in, expect to see Jorginho, Rudiger, maybe even Kepa feature a lot more very soon.
Yeah, I mean, I hope the next manager could actually try to at least rotate a little bit better. But the same way as well, we needed to try and sell some more players out because we do have way too many players on our squad list right now. First off, pick up my partner in crime, Lawrence. How have you been today? Has the news stuck in yet about Frank Lampard?
It's starting to. It's very interesting to see a lot of different people's opinions, whether it's on Twitter, obviously, jumping on the stream with Matisse and yourself and Dami earlier. And it's interesting. A lot of people have very different, views on this. A lot of people going against bloody Roman and the board, and a lot of people saying it's a good decision, understandable decision. Some people being, in my opinion, slightly too happy. You can be, in my opinion, you can think it's a good decision, but don't jump around celebrating. I don't think that shows enough respect to what Lampard has done for us. Not necessarily as a manager, but as a man, as a player. But I mean, in general, I'm good. I try to put the sentiments, I guess, behind me. Lampard is gone now. I can't change it. So there's no point trying to blame the new manager for that. So, hoping that Tuchel can turn things around as quickly as possible and that we can still have a fairly successful season, I guess.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you the same question. I'm going around the panel as well. And that's, with hindsight in mind, looking at the experience Lampard had when he first joined us and the other options that could have potentially been there at the time, do you think the signing of Frank Lampard was something the club wanted, actually genuinely believed in, or do you think it was just a PR move to try and steady the ship with a manager that the fans would have backed?
I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix of that. I think it's certainly part of it was to try and appease the fans in a very difficult season, and they probably expected a much more difficult season than we ended up having. And realistically, they probably thought we wouldn't be able to get top four, and then they probably would have used that as an excuse to get rid of Frank again, in all honesty. That didn't quite happen. He got top four. He got to the FA Cup final, even though he didn't win that, but that was more thanks to the ref and Pulisic pulling his hamstring in about the worst moment possible. And then we go into the season, they certainly used him and kind of milked him a little bit in terms of getting some signings in, because I think his player pool is going to be far superior to someone like Thomas Tuchel. Not that Tuchel has zero player pool, because he is certainly an attractive manager, but the player pool that Frank Lampard has is certainly not quite the same thing. And obviously, we touched on it before on Matisse's stream as well. There's a lot of different ways to look at this. You can give Frank Lampard all of the excuses. You can say we didn't have preseason. 10 players were in quarantine during the 1 week preseason that we did have. Kai Havertz had 4 days of training before he joined us. Then he caught a certain thing and was out for a month, and it affected him for weeks and months after that. Ziyech picked up an injury in the one and only preseason friendly. Mendy only came in on the 5th match day. Chilwell, something like the same. Thiago Silva only came in on the 3rd game or something of the season. So you can obviously find all of these excuses, but at the end of the day, when you hear James Maddison after the Leicester game saying, yeah, we saw that they sometimes switch off for corners, hence why we played it short and quick, and then we just did them in, and you hear a player of the opposition say that, at that point you sat there thinking, do we know what we're doing? And I assume that's kind of where the board were at as well. I mean, you saw the Man City game. There was some getting unfortunate in there, I guess. But you can't be acting like that. You can't be spending 250 million and then lose games like that. You know, I'm not even saying that I 100% expected like challenge for the league and win this and win that and everything be perfect and everything be rosy all season. That would be ridiculous. And maybe the board did expect a little bit too much in some aspect of the game, of the situation. But some things were just not how they should be. And the constant indecisiveness within Frank of throwing players under the bus and then backing players and then throwing players under the bus, it's confusing. But, and I said this on Matisse's channel earlier as well, these certain individuals that did apparently go to the board and have a go at Lampard, whether it's in tactical terms or whether it's in whatever terms they might have done this in, all of these players need to be gotten rid of immediately and tomorrow. Like, I'm not even saying let them run out their contracts, find players to sell them to. I don't care. We have plenty of money. Buy them out of their contract and send them on the road. Or put them in the academy if you need to, like we did with Danny Drinkwater. Because I don't care who you are. I'm not having that. I'm absolutely not having that. And I don't care. Like, I had the same attitude when Jose Mourinho got sacked. We knew Jose Mourinho had to get sacked back then. But certain other actions within the squad should have been taken because this happens too frequently at Chelsea. Happened for Jose, happened for Conte, happened for Sarri. As soon as things don't go well, there is reports or factually player power issues going on. And that can't consistently be the case. People need to understand that the players are the employees, the manager is essentially the boss. Of course, there's another boss higher up, but still, stop like waffling about and crying, especially like if someone like Mount, Reece James, Thiago Silva, if they went to the board and had a go, I could even understand this because they were at least performing. But the ones that did go to the board were the ones that were playing the worst of all of them. So I'm like, I'm not having that. You do your job first, and then you can complain about someone else.
You see, this is the thing, and this is something I want to touch on as well. How many managers have we gone through? And not even how many managers, but how many different squads have we gone through? And the one thing that remains the same is we question the players' mentality. We question the mentality and the culture inside of the squad. Alex, I'm going to come to you on this one. Like, we understand the issues with Frank Lampard and the manager as well, but how much do the squad have to take in blame for this?
Look, Lewis, there's two ways you can look at it. You can look at it as, at the end of the day, Lampard's the manager or the head coach or whatever you want to call him. He's responsible for picking the team. He's responsible for the system, etc. And then you can look at it from the other side of the fence and go, you know what? Maybe the players don't like the system they're playing or they're losing motivation and that's why they're not playing for the manager. But either way, you've got to sort of you've got to think about it, right? And you've got to think what's changed from last season. Now, the biggest change is the addition of the new players we brought into the squad, whether that be right at the start of the season or a few games in. Now, I've had a lot of people say to me about, for all the people complaining about certain players not being good, saying, well, they were good last season and whatnot. You know what? Last season, this is why I've commended him so highly for last season, because I don't necessarily think the players were as good as they were playing. I think a lot of that was down to Lampard being a manager, getting the best out of them because of his status. And, I think someone was saying the other day about, you can't win games with desire and whatever. I disagree because last season, I don't necessarily think the squad was that great, which is why I'm commending him for finishing fourth. What I do believe is the players' desire and motivation allowed them to look better than they actually were. Now, you've got to look at it this season and say, as of late, why aren't the players motivated? And, we're hearing today about, about how he's losing the dressing room, certain players and whatnot. But ultimately, as a manager, you are responsible for the squad. Now, earlier on, when we were on your channel, we were having a debate, comparing him to Solskjaer, for instance. Solskjaer, who I don't personally think is a great manager, obviously has some know-how when it comes to man management, for example, which is why I think Man United are where they are. Yes, they've got quality, but you've got to look at how he's managed players. How good has Pogba been in the last month or two? You've seen a dramatic increase in his performances. I understand he was injured at the start of the season, but at the end of the day, when you've got so many big personalities in the squad, it is a challenge to keep everyone happy and everyone motivated, which is why I think Ole has that slight edge over Lampard because he's managed to do that with a Man United team where you've got, let's face it, you've got some big names in there. You've got a Maguire, you've got a Cavani, you've got a Bruno, you've got a Pogba. You know, so that even a De Gea, for example. So you've got some big players, and that just I think boils down to if it's not the system, then it's the motivation. And you know, I said to you a few games ago, there's no real reason apart from the manager's system and how he plays as to why the players wouldn't be motivated. Because last season in itself, definitely for the players that were there, should be motivated enough. Finishing fourth is a great achievement.
Yeah, finishing fourth as a first season, it was a great achievement. When we're on motivation, I do want to talk about both different sides of it. Before I start that, Mike, let me get your thoughts and then we'll go talk deeper into some motivation because there is definitely two different sides of this story that we want to go into.
Yeah, so, you know, I was on here like earlier today and had a bit of time to digest it. I read the Athletic article. It's really weird because there's no way to kind of talk about a particular thing without coming across as like being a side. And I'm not a particular side. I just think there's lots of different things to discuss about what went wrong. Just to pick up on the whole man management thing about Ole and Lampard, the reason why I think it's really difficult to compare that is because when you're talking about the big players that, or that, you know, Ole's had to keep happy, let's be honest, what big players or senior players are on the bench for United? Like, I think in terms of the senior players, they're pretty much all playing. Whereas on Chelsea, you had a lot of young academy players, and then the ones who reportedly went to the board, your Alonsos, your Rudiger, I don't know if Jorginho went, but you know, those kind of, they're the more senior players that weren't playing well. And they were the ones who were getting a bit frustrated. And they're the ones that kind of like were kicking up the fuss. Whereas in United, the only one I think really who like, and I don't even know if like it's Van der Beek, but he's the only one really on the bench. So I don't, in terms of man management and like keeping everyone happy, I think Lampard it was like harder for Lampard because he had more players to keep happy than Chelsea did. And also when you like kind of zoom out, and I know Chelsea have had this history of player power, and obviously Lampard's even been part of that. The player power that was used this time was from players that, you know, like your Kovacic, your Rudiger, like who are they? Like what have they haven't been part of any of our core teams that have won anything. They haven't been part of any core team previously that have won anything. So that for me is why the man management argument is a bit like it's I don't think you can directly compare the Ole man management to the Lampard man management. And again, I'm just want to point, like, I'm not like Lampard 100% in. I do think he should have stayed in the season, blah, 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 but whatever. And then obviously there's loads of things in the Athletic that I think you said you're going to go into and we're going to have a bit of discussion about. But yeah, that's kind of like what I just want to say for now.
All right, cool. Well, let's move on to this talk about motivation. And we've spoken about the squad and how hard it is to try and motivate the squad in bad areas. But the same way, the Athletic were pulling out a lot of direct quotes from sources talking about the players and Frank Lampard's inability to get the best out of them. I'm hearing sources saying the problem was the manager didn't talk to the players, well, only the ones he liked, which is what one of the sources from the Athletic says. I know of players who weren't in the team that didn't hear from him for many months. That's very frustrating for a player because you don't know what you have to do better, what the manager's thinking. Another one saying, it's very weird for me that Lampard's way of working was to be distant to the players. He was a player until very recently. He should know how to approach players, but he seemed to have forgotten. Another source as well is saying the communication of Lampard with the players was just not fluent. When I met with one of the players last year, I was asking if the manager was telling him things. He said to me, no, but he usually never speaks to the players. And another one where players are talking about the intensity of training sessions and the impact it could have when you're playing back-to-back games. One final quote also says there are insinuations from players that Lampard didn't provide them with tactical instructions, that some were just told to simply go out onto the pitch and express themselves. One doubts that this is a view shared by the man in question. With that in mind, and we'll go around the panel again, Lawrence, I'll start with you. This thing about hard to motivate players, is it one specifically on one side of the coin, or are we looking at it from both different angles here?
The motivation is a difficult thing because in general, I don't think it should be down to the manager to have to motivate the players, because the players are being paid very good money to do their job. This is not like some cleaner, some McDonald's dude that's getting minimum wage, right? These are players that are making millions and millions of dollars every year, pounds, euros, whatever, every year. You shouldn't need to be motivated to work, to run, to at least try your best. Hey, it's a performance-based sport. You can't always be perfect. You can't always be incredible. We know that. We get that. But seeing not trying is a different story. And, we spoke about last season, and Frank certainly did well last season. And this is not what I'm saying at all. But we also had these issues last season. Remember the 3-0 away at Sheffield United? Did people look like they was trying then? It's not like, we got top 4 last season. We did, and Frank Lampard did well, and a lot of the players did well. But it was a combination of both things together. It's not just saying, we should praise Frank to God knows what level just because we got top 4. Yeah, he did well for that. But it's also he needed the players to do certain things. And yeah, you can say, the players did well because of him, but we will never know that. That's just pure speculation. So I don't think we should give him that credit just because we don't know. We can say we might be able to give him the credit, but we can't be 100% certain. As for the not talking to the players for months, that is a weird one. That is a weird one. Unless it's Alonso, because clearly they fell out. So fair enough, don't talk to him. I don't need you to talk to Alonso. Tomori looks like one of those. He might not have spoken to in months, just from whatever happened around it.
It could definitely be one of the fringe players. Like, we're not going to think that's one of the main starters in the team.
Exactly. So that is a weird one. I still do believe that something must have gone on behind the scenes between Frank and Tomori. Otherwise, we would have never gotten to this situation. I mean, he's not player of the year under him at Derby to come here, play, 15, 20 games in a row nearly, to then out of nowhere be dropped and never see it the day of light again, except obviously coming on against Liverpool. But that was also a situation where Liverpool was before Thiago Silva was playing, wasn't it? So we had also a certain lack of depth within the centre-backs, which is also a part of the reason why he was the one to come on, because that was also when Rudiger was still out of the picture. So it wasn't like Tomori was high in the pecking order then. It was just like that Thiago Silva wasn't there yet, and the two other ones were already playing. So it's difficult. I think there has to be blame has to be put to many different places, but the fact that he doesn't talk to players and says things like just express yourself works well when you're winning, right? That is all well and good, Everyone knows this. When you're winning and the system that you have works and there's players that you have know the system, then go out there and tell them, do what you can do and express yourself. That's well and good. But not when form is hitting, the fan, shit is hitting the fan, and, nothing is going right and you can't get a win, to save your life. Then don't be doing that. But obviously what the Athletic didn't necessarily specify was in what period was that said. If Frank, ahead of the Sheffield United game, which we won 4-1, if before that game he said to them, express yourself, well, then clearly that instruction worked brilliantly well. But if it was, say, ahead of the Arsenal game, well, clearly that backfired. So that is kind of some context that we haven't fully been given, I guess. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, we just need to accept it's happened now. And, we won't change that. Things definitely went wrong from both sides. And I think a big issue for Frank, and I think that is a big issue that a lot of top players face when they go into management, including someone like Thierry Henry as well, who obviously failed miserably at Monaco, and I think is still now in the MLS for Toronto or Montreal or some MLS team anyway. The problem that these very, very top players have is that they, I think, have certain expectations to players that were just basics for themselves. That sometimes they don't. Not everyone is as professional, as incredible of a professional as Frank Lampard was. I mean, Jose Mourinho said this a number of times. Frank Lampard stayed behind in training to do extra work every day. Frank Lampard was never late. Frank Lampard always did his absolute best in every training session, in every system that was used on the pitch. But I think some of his problem might be that he expected that from every player. And that, sadly, is unrealistic. It would be lovely to expect that from every player, but that's not how the world works. Not every human is the same. So I think part of the problem is that, that was his expectation, that he expected certain things from everybody that, weren't quite happening. And he was probably fine if a manager didn't talk to him for months. If he needed something, if he had to say something to a manager, he would always have the balls to go and say it.
And so you think it's another thing where it's like, if you're too good of a coach, you struggle to deal with players who are a bit more limited in their ability. Because I know there's something that players like Thierry Henry struggled with when they were trying to adapt from turning into a manager as a player.
I think it's just part of the inexperience. It's just a different kind of inexperience to when you go into management as a not so successful player, and it's something that you need to learn. It takes a few years for you to adapt to. Just because that's what you were used to. Because when Frank was in the dressing room, was at Chelsea, his group of players were probably Terry and Cole and Drogba, and these lot they was close to. They were all top level professionals and that weren't doing silly things. And the ones that weren't 100% professional, he was probably not that close to anyway. He probably saw what was going on, right? But it wasn't like that close, I assume. So it's just something that, again, is total speculation. That I think that's what might be the issue. But at the end of the day, all we can see is that when performances dipped, when results dipped, he didn't really find a way to fix it. And rather than fixing it, things arguably got worse with, the tip of the coin or whatever the word is, the cherry on top being the Leicester game, when after the 65th minute, other than Mount and maybe Pulisic and Reece to some extent, but he just looked injured to me, stop trying. Like everyone, like it's all well and good Thiago Silva posting that nice message on Instagram, but where was that intensity that you had in that message when we was playing against Leicester? I saw you taking about half a minute for every single pass. So where was that intensity then? I'm not saying it's just Thiago Silva's fault, obviously not, and obviously the vibe around you, what's the word? Like brushes off on you to some extent as well. But I don't know. And someone put in the chat earlier the fact that Aspie hasn't said anything is very interesting as well, because usually he's the first one to comment on this. Even when Sarri was back.
The Athletic said as well was that Frank Lampard was looking to get rid of Azpilicueta in the summer too. He was on the list of defenders that were meant to go out with Tomori, Rudiger, and Marcos Alonso.
I mean, other than Aspie, I agree with this, but even Tomori, he wanted to get rid of, apparently.
Made sense.
Even Tomori, he wanted to get rid of at that point already, apparently. But
Tomori when I do think, I've said it for time now.
For sure. But when his replacement option would have been Tarkowski, then I'm like, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, some of his options were a bit weird. He wanted Declan Rice, which was as one of the more versatile options. We'll move into Declan Rice in a few minutes because that's his own topic in itself. But Tarkowski, in fact, Marina had to step in that one and just say, nah, I don't rate him. We're not getting this guy. But Sadiq, we'll move on to you as well. Motivation. Now, is this mostly on the players, or is this also on the manager struggling to get the best out of them? What are your thoughts?
The manager loses always at the end, man. Like, if one thing goes wrong, then it all leads on, unfortunately. So, at the end of the day, Jorginho, Kovacic, Alonso, they all win at the end. What we want from this is for the Deadwood to leave, but they won't leave. So, I feel like the same problem is going to happen again in 2 years' time.
You think it's going to be another issue with Thomas Tuchel as well?
We can't change it. Legit, we can't change it. Like, how the modern day era has changed.
Now, here's the thing, because I've always thought that Chelsea were trying to start, they've been trying to start a project for a good few seasons now. It's just failed with numerous managers for all separate different reasons. Conte fell out with the board. Maurizio Sarri felt homesick and also had issues with the Chelsea fan base, which is why that one fell apart. Mourinho had the entire mess of 2015 to deal with on his back too, so that's why that one didn't work out. Thomas Tuchel is, I think, the next one that we're going to attempt with a project, but even then, I'm not even sure if they will with Thomas Tuchel, because if we wanted Thomas Tuchel, we would have got him in weeks earlier before now. So now it just seems like it's more of a bit part replacement just because we need to get an option immediately, and we're trying to focus more on that. Alex, I'm going to move to you as well. What are your thoughts, bro?
Regarding Thomas Tuchel, look, if we're sitting here talking about, the mentality and a series of managers losing the dressing room and this player power issue over the course of, say, the last 10 years in particular, then listen, to me, it just seems like it's going to be another have him for 2 seasons, then see you later. That's my initial impression. And the only reason I say that is because you think about what we've read about, Lampard and him persisting over the signing of Declan Rice, for example. When Tuchel was at PSG, I think in his first season or whatever, after they bought Mbappe on a permanent and whatnot and other signings, he was still sort of digging his heels in and complaining to the board about not having strength in depth at the fullback areas, for example, right? You think about how we've spent 200 million under Lampard, who, let's be honest, he is a novice to this managerial game, right? But he could invest 250 million pounds, say, in a window under Tuchel, and let's face it, there's a good chance that he'll find something to complain about. And he does have a habit of losing his temper with certain players, and indeed the board. And you think how many managers at Chelsea have had a set to with the board, and I just think he'll be another one. And I think so far, I can't really see this idea of actually trying to build something where we're successful over a period of years, rather than this, we're successful over this period of time. All right, that's not gone to plan. We'll sack another manager, regress for a year or so. Then, it just keeps happening. And I think with appointing Thomas Tuchel, it'll just be another one of these situations where, we'll probably play all right football, might even win a couple of things as well. Then as soon as shit hits the fan, before we know it, he would have fallen out with I don't know, a Thiago Silva or an Aspi or someone, one of those sort of senior players, and then we'll be on a losing streak, and it'll be, oh yeah, even though we spent X amount of money, we still haven't strengthened in this area, and all of a sudden it's just World War III between him, the players, and the board. And I can't see him being here for more than 2 years. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people are going to say that, trust Tuchel, you've got to give him time before he's even got the job, which I completely agree with. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, you need to see someone in the flesh to actually give, some sort of objective opinion on them. But what I will say is, my initial thoughts of how I think it will happen is, I can see it being another manager who's here for the space of 2 years, and then us just being in this same repetitive cycle again.
Big up Amarillo, big up
Bro,
Amarillo.
man with the €50
A man said
donation.
50
Fair
euros.
play, man.
50 euros, man.
Fucking hell.
The man was already
Tuchel-
dropping a big piece in my stream earlier as well. Man's made out of cash.
Right, okay, thank you for the generous donation. Man said if Tuchel fails, and Roberto Mancini work, maybe. I mean, look what he achieved in Man City in the 11-12 season, but that's just my silly opinion / fantasy. Here's the thing, I can't really say. What's Mancini doing now? I remember he was at Galatasaray in 2014, and since then,
he's Italy manager now. I'm pretty sure he's Italy manager now.
Is he the Italy manager?
Pretty sure he is.
Okay, then that will explain the fantasy, because we might be Italian. Let me check. Roberto
Might be,
Mancini.
to be fair.
Yeah, he is. He's the manager.
Yeah, he is Italian manager.
Yeah, that's right.
What fell out with? He had issues with the squad as well at Manchester City. So
See, doesn't that tell
Yeah,
you
but
one
I think at City they always wanted Pep, didn't they? So he was always gonna leave.
No, but they
had
wanted
Pellegrini
Pep, but
between.
that wasn't really too realistic, because he was at Bayern Munich at the time, weren't he?
Yeah, they had
No,
Pellegrini
12
between.
yeah.
He'd already confirmed he was joining Bayern at the end of that season. That was it.
Yeah.
I think
It's weird, isn't it? Because if you think about it in a worldwide scheme of things, how many managers fall out with players? That's just what happens in football these days. And what Alex said as well, do we have any manager that, comes in for more than 2 years? No, but it didn't work with Mourinho. It didn't work with Conte. It didn't work with Sarri. It didn't work with bloody Lampard, our greatest player of all time. At this point, and that's what happened to me today, I just have accepted that's just never going to happen at Chelsea. So there's no point complaining Tuchel will just be like that again. Yeah, but everyone will. So I don't have an issue at all with the fact that Tuchel clashes heads with the board, because, and what? The board will sack him anyways. And the board will clash with him too. So no difference.
So I literally, it's quite interesting that this came up, because I was making notes of what what was coming across today, and everything that Alex said was something I wrote about, as in just like I was just getting my thoughts on my head. And yeah, I think like I feel I kind of was lulled into thinking, this kind of comes back to the PR point that you spoke about before, like the club trying to save face. So when the whole Lampard thing happened and the club was like, we now want, sustainability in terms of management, we want to bring through academy players, we want long-term vision, I kind of actually believe that. And I think it's probably like a bit of, like romanticism coming in because Lampard was coming in. And I think that's why maybe some people are quite hurt by what's happened today, even though when you look at the past, this is what Chelsea do. We are like a very short term, like we do just recycle managers every 2 years. So, and then the only thing that I was thinking about is every time we do recycle managers or like we sack a manager and then we kind of go over the reasons why, and it always inevitably comes up that like, oh, he didn't give like young players a chance, things like that, like is one of the reasons, not obviously the main reason. And now I just think we need to kind of accept that this is the club that we are in terms of we're going to have 2 year cycles. And I think we might even need to let go of the whole giving academy players a chance anymore. Because I think this is like the only time when it's really going to, when it's happened under the spell of Lampard. Because he was kind of forced to do it.
I wouldn't say
no
that.
No other manager has done that though. Like how long did
no manager has done, but same way, look at the squad that we have right now in terms of depth. Half of the good depth that we have is our own youth players. If we're talking about the most consistent players, a lot of those have been our own youth players as well.
Oh no, I 100% agree. I think our academy players have been the best players that we've played since last year and this year. But if we didn't have a transfer ban like when Lampard came in, do you really think those academy players would be playing right now? Like I think we've always had like the chance. We've always had some good academy players, but they've never been given chances because the managers that come in know that if they go on a bad run of 5-6 games.
I would say Hudson-Odoi and Loftus-Cheek did get given a couple good opportunities under Maurizio. Sorry, just saying.
Yeah. No, it's very rare. But like, when did Loftus-Cheek he first got his minutes in the Champions League under Mourinho, and he was kind of good, but then Mourinho like never really played him again.
Yeah, but we've also
I think it's different now because our squad is.
I've finished. Go for it.
Sorry, just quickly, I got a dip here. I'm sorry. I'll talk to you guys soon. Yeah, take care, man.
Take care, man.
Yeah, take care.
But
I was just thinking
now is if we now basically we're just going to get some more like it'll be another KDB, Salah, Lukaku thing. I think we will have promising players, but the only way to get promising players to like really work well is to play them, and I don't think managers coming in now will be able to do that. I have got a bit of hope that Tuchel might maintain with these younger players because apparently when he interviewed for the job before, he had quite a lot of knowledge in our youth system and the youth players, but maybe that just could have been because he was just trying to make sure he got the job. But yeah, I agree with Alex, and I think we will mention it. We are just we're just gonna go through managers every 2 years. I just hope that the way that the game has changed, that short term view of recycling managers every 2 years is going to work, because it definitely worked before, but is it going to work now going forward?
I think the whole academy thing doesn't really matter so much now because almost half our squad is academy now anyway. So you have to be somewhat realistic. You can't have a season like last season every season. Like even this season, Frank, did we? I think Andrein is the only guy we gave a debut to this season.
Yeah.
Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Exactly, because I don't think Lewis Bay or Henry Lawrence or Livramento, I don't think any of them actually got minutes. So you can't have a season like last season every season. Once you have the squad quite full of these already young players that you just pushed up from the academy, you can't just push more and more in because, that won't work. So I think because of what Lampard did last season, we aren't in as much of a dire need of that again and anymore. And Tuchel certainly likes young players. Like he made Pulisic and Dembele at Dortmund, Thilo Kehrer, the young German centre-back / right-back at PSG, basically made his whole career there. So he definitely likes young players. So I don't think this is a disadvantage to the likes of Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi, Mount, even Abraham. Abraham won't be first choice, but he will get minutes.
Exactly. I'm not too worried about the academy, and I'm not thinking they're going to be thrown into the mud just based off Lampard going, because Lampard wasn't the only hope for these guys. Like The main aim of this academy was eventually to push the best through. Even the last few even before the last few seasons where we've actually seen players breaking through, we've still used the academy, but it's been more just for the best of the best. Like, it was very tighter circumstances as to who would actually make it from the academy to the first team.
Yeah, like we this is all part of the like huge transition we're going under, where we're just revamping the whole squad. So like I just hope, like I support Tuchel, I support whatever manager that comes in, but I just hope that, like, you know, he is, whoever gets it, I just always hope they're given a bit of time just to allow this large squad to, you know, to develop. And also, like you said before, we do need to get rid of some of the deadwood, because I know it is a good thing to have a squad depth, but we've got, like, I think it is too much. We don't need to be
it is way too much.
I know we sent tomorrow out on loan, but, and like, there's obviously deadwood in midfield that just don't fit the system, because Jorginho is very niche. We don't really have a backup for Kante. Well, I mean, I'd like Billy Gilmore in that position if we play that system, but you know what I mean. We do need to clear the deadwood, because I think that also has an impact in the dressing room when you've got those senior players.
That's genuinely been one of the biggest issues for it. That's one of the things I wanted to move into next as well. The entire summer 2020 transfer window, because I think 2020 in general is where you really started to see like small breaks between Marina, the board, and Frank Lampard. We'll start off with the stuff in January, because around the January-February period, and this gets really forgotten about because we went into lockdown so quickly afterwards, but Frank Lampard and the board were showing signs of discontent already by that point. Frank Lampard had wanted Aubameyang in from that because there was rumours that he was trying to get his way out of Arsenal. He wanted Hakim Ziyech as well 6 months earlier, which I know we could have got, but it would have cost us about another 15-20 million to do as well. And quotes are already talking about a bit of discontent between them from that point in the season as well. We won't talk too much about that because we still reached our targets. We got top four. We went to the FA Cup final. Grand scheme of things, it didn't really mean too much. But then moving into summer as well, insiders in The Athletic are now saying that out of all the 6 big transfers that we made, only Ben Chilwell was an actual Frank Lampard target. So with this in mind, was this really Frank Lampard's team then? Or was this the board's team that they had prepared for a future manager? Cos, I'll start with you on this.
Personally, I think that I think the board would have had a good option getting all of these players in, because I think if it was down to Lampard, right, I think Lampard would have built a completely different team with, like, obviously, as you said before, Lampard, we were linked with James Tarkowski, Declan Rice, players of this ilk. So I genuinely think that the board made the better signings. I think that Lampard wouldn't have made signings like Kai Havertz, like signings for the future. He would have made stock gaps and players that would fit his so-called system for the now. So, like, for example, I don't think he would have played Tomori. For me personally, I personally think that Tomori's a better centre-back than James Tarkowski, yet this guy wanted James Tarkowski in. So I genuinely think that the board would have made better signings even if Lampard got the chance to make his own signings.
Yeah, the one thing I will say about this is Frank Lampard never really had the full say on transfers anyway. He was only head coach. He was never really manager of the club. So there were some things taken out of his depth. But same way, 1 transfer in 6 was his own. And this isn't me starting to complain about the transfers, because I'm really happy with that transfer window. It's the best one that we've had in years. Even more surprising, that is the board that came up with that one, because we know how much we've complained about the board's transfers over the last 3 years. But Adam, I'm going to come to you as well. Frank Lampard's squad, or is this building more into the fact that, in the thing we were talking about earlier with Frank Lampard's managerial time being basically a big PR move to set a team up, coming off the 18-19 season with a player with a legend in mind that the fans would be able to back for that period of time?
Well, 6 months ago, Lewis, I would have said to you that's a Frank Lampard squad. All of them would have been a Frank Lampard signing, because there were rumours going what Lampard personally called Timo Werner. And he personally,
Loki, I do still believe that as well.
Yeah, no, that's still true.
They told him to go do it and then go get them more interested, because all of those signings already had clubs that were interested in them as well.
Yeah.
Werner had Liverpool, Havertz had Liverpool, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid as well. Ziyech, I'm not too sure about other options, but I'm sure there were other options in for him as well. But the point still stands.
Yeah, I mean, for Lampard, I mean, I don't know if they were his targets. I do believe that we only brought Lampard in simply because there was a transfer embargo. If we did not have a transfer embargo, we would not have brought Lampard in. It's as simple as that. I think the board probably did only want him for a season, just to transition. But because he achieved top 4, I think the board said, all right, we'll give him another chance. We've given him the resources to work with. Whether that's his signings or not is actually kind of irrelevant. He's been given world-class players to work with, and he hasn't worked with them to their full advantage or to his full advantage. But yeah, I mean, it's just a shame. It's just such a shame, really, that it hasn't worked out for him. But I don't think they would have all been Lampard signings. Looking 6 months ago, I would have said yeah. But now looking back at it, I think, is it signings for another manager to come in and work with these players? Especially now we're looking at likes of Havertz and Werner, and now it's a German-speaking manager coming in with Tuchel, even Thiago Silva for that matter. Thiago Silva thrived under Thomas Tuchel last season for PSG. He's come here, so I think it was we planning to have Tuchel a while ago, because the Athletic even said that if Lampard, someone told the Athletic back in August, if Lampard goes on a 4-5 game out of form run, he will get the sack. So was this planned already by the board 6 months ago?
I don't think so, because he was still in charge of PSG, wasn't he? So I don't think they could have planned with that.
No. But
Yeah,
same way,
in general, in new manager in general, not even just Tuchel, just in general.
No, that's true.
New manager was the board.
I still believe Nagelsmann is their number one option. Everything is looking towards Nagelsmann. It's just I've been saying.
Fabrizio Romano said today that Tuchel was our first option. Interestingly,
I think it was an Abramovich option more than the board.
Fabrizio said that earlier.
No, but that makes it more baffling, because if he was our option, why didn't we go for him weeks ago when we were rumoured to be thinking about it?
I guess because he didn't fancy him, we kind of had to convince him first, maybe? Because I guess it only started after City, right?
Short-term option, but same way, I think he already knew, like, this is the best job on the table for him by a country mile.
Yeah, he was probably wanting to wait until the summer to take it, I assume, not take it at all.
Yeah,
I think,
we're hearing a lot
of down after the City game, when I think that's when they started looking into getting replacements in.
Yeah, exactly. Because before that would have been harsh.
And I think Tuchel preferred to wait until the summer, so he probably got a bit of resistance initially.
Matt Law just released an article of his view of the whole situation, which gives a few other insights to what the Athletic said. Do you want me to read it out? Or?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
All right. So headline is player clashes, allegations of favoritism, and a ruthless post-season appraisal. The inside story of Frank Lampard's Chelsea demise. Chelsea hero had been left in no doubt that fourth place would never be good enough for Roman Abramovich, no matter what the circumstances. When Chelsea confirmed the return of Frank Lampard as head coach in July of 2019, the statement, which sat under a picture of the club's record goalscorer next to director Marino Granovskaya, announced he had signed a 3-year contract. In actual fact, that deal was a 2 guaranteed years with the option of a third, which means Chelsea will presumably only have to pay Lampard 6 months of his annual wage, around £2 million pounds.
If you want to add to that as well, Frank Lampard was also the lowest paid manager of the Abramovich era, so it would be easy to sack him from this point in the season as well.
Although actually not that much less than Sarri, I think.
What?
I think Sarri was on 6.
Sorry.
No, I think Sarri was on 6, because we already went to all right, we've paid too much to Jose and Conte, let's get cheaper managers now.
Conte's really making these new managers suffer, man. It's peak. Go on.
Not just the team, he makes the future suffer as well. Then it goes on to say, whatever the good long-term intentions of Chelsea at the time, the fact that the option of the third year was never taken up at the end of Lampard's first season in charge will leave conspiracy theorists wondering whether or not the doubts inside Stamford Bridge were present long before this season's run of 5 defeats in 8 Premier League games. Excuse me. Lampard in many ways was the only choice for Chelsea after Maurizio Sarri had left for Juventus at a time when the club had sold their best player Eden Hazard and were serving a transfer ban. That is not to say he did not deserve the job or due diligence was not carried out, but Stamford Bridge did not have its normal pulling power. The Blues would have been impressed by his work at Derby County, who he took to the Championship playoff final, but Lampard also provided the club with some positive PR, both with supporters and beyond Stamford Bridge at the time they most needed it. Now, 18 months later, Lampard and his backroom staff will be wondering whether they were ever the long-term choice of owner Roman Abramovich and the Chelsea board, or whether they were always viewed as the best option to get the Blues through a particular period that effectively finished at the end of last season. Lampard knew the rules of engagement at Chelsea better than anybody, and he had been warned by former managers of the club that the Stamford Bridge job was unlike any other in European football. And yet even the 42-year-old who played under 10 different Blues managers would have been taken aback by the ruthless nature of the Chelsea hot seat after it became clear the Champions League qualification and the FA Cup final at the end of his first season in charge was viewed as a passable achievement rather than any sort of success within the club. Rather than being called in to discuss his impressive work, go on.
I was just going to say, a point off finishing fifth, I'm not surprised. Like, it is passable circumstances. We're not going to say... We'll say it's a success because we got top four and because it's Frank Lampard, and we are all, as fans, going to give him at least a little bit of that bias. But if you're going to look at it from a business perspective, goal difference and 1 point separating us from fifth place, yeah, that is just passable. But yeah, go on, continue.
That is not to say that Lampard was never backed or supported, because he was. Chelsea spent £220 million on new players last summer, including £50 million on left-back Ben Chilwell, whose signing was very much pushed by the head coach. Abramovich even took the unprecedented step of explaining his decision to sack Lampard in Chelsea's confirmation statement, but the Russian had not offered any words of encouragement at the end of Lampard's first season in charge or during his season's 17-game unbeaten run in all competitions that had seen the Blues briefly move into Premier League title contention and breeze into the last 16 of the Champions League. Instead, Roman Abramovich and the Chelsea board were more worried about the fact the club had finished last season 33 points behind leaders Liverpool and 15 back of second place Manchester City. Concern over that gap, which Lampard was informed had to be closed, prompted the eye-catching summer transfer business and also explained where Chelsea were getting twitchy as soon as this season's unbeaten run ended against Everton at Goodison Park. Lampard sides were beating the teams below them, but not those that were meant to be fighting closer to the top of the table. Lampard not only faced question from journalists over pressure on his position after back-to-back defeats to Everton and Wolverhampton Wanderers, he and his backroom team were also under scrutiny from the inside of the club, underlining the feeling of those around Lampard that Chelsea were always looking for the first available way out of their experiment. There is more.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this literally just came out a minute ago saying Rudiger is understood to have clashed with Aspie on more than one occasion as the Chelsea captain attempted to ease tensions between players at Chelsea's.
Yeah, this is still to come in this article, yeah.
Oh, okay, so you're reading through it. Yeah, go for it. I won't interrupt
watch
you.
That, though. Rudiger will punch him up,
Yeah, Yeah, probably would. But we can take Azpilicueta out of this thing. We were talking about him wanting to be sold a few minutes ago in the stream as well. So it definitely wasn't Aspie that was one of the players falling out with a manager. But go on, Loz.
His experience of the club as a player meant that Lampard knew he would not worry too much about any discussions that may have been taking place above him. But he was deeply concerned by the impact of being left such an inflated squad to manage. Just too big squad, my bad. Like many Premier League clubs, Chelsea found it difficult to sell players last summer because of the financial consequences of the global situation, and Lampard was left with a large unbalanced squad full of internationals and senior professionals. The potential problems quickly became apparent as Antonio Rudiger was relegated down to fifth choice centre-back and was left out of a series of matchday squads, with Lampard open to allowing the German international to leave. Rudiger is understood to have clashed with Cesar Azpilicueta on more than one occasion as Chelsea's captain attempted to ease tension between players at Chelsea's Cobham training ground. Some of the young players who have performed so admirably for Chelsea and Lampard are believed to have complained about the treatment they received from disgruntled teammates, and accusation of certain graduates being favoured have not always been solely confined to social media. But just as Chelsea could not sell another two of the players Lampard would have allowed to leave, Marcos Alonso and Jorginho, Rudiger stayed put and managed to work his way back into the team, puzzling, starting back-to-back Premier League games against Fulham and Leicester. Alonso was frozen out completely after storming to the team bus after the chaotic 3-3 draw at West Bromwich Albion, and as has been the case on many occasions at Chelsea, the unhappy players have outlasted the manager. The arrival of Lampard's successor, Thomas Tuchel, will be seen as a positive move for two of his German compatriots, Timo Werner and Kai Havertz, who have both struggled to adapt to life at Chelsea. Werner's problems have occasionally looked mental as well as physical, while there is a feeling that we may not see the best of Havertz before next season.
Makes sense.
There is a little bit more. I'm just going to finish it. It's not that much longer.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Chelsea dispute theories that a disappointing form of Werner and Havertz has been instrumental in Lampard's sacking, instead pointing to a lack of confidence that has been running through the group for well over a month. Statistics and trends are taken seriously by Abramovich and his small team of advisors. So the fact that Lampard sits at the bottom of a table listing the points per game ratio of Chelsea managers during the oligarch's reign weighed heavily against him, as did the fact that at the halfway point of the season, West Ham United were the only team in the top half of the table that the Blues have beaten. Abramovich had wanted to see evidence that momentum can shift back in Chelsea's favour, and the feeling among Lampard and his staff had been that they would get a chance to close some ground to the top 4 in the Premier League against Wolves on Wednesday night and then Burnley, following Sunday's FA Cup victory over Luton Town. But Abramovich's mind was already made up, and there will be a nagging sense that Lampard was always fighting a losing battle to be given time at the club he almost gave 15 years to.
That is a lot. The first thing that stuck in my head is the senior players are beefing the youth players for their spots. Like, that's a madness. First 2 players I can think, Marcus Alonso and Antonio Rudiger.
100%.
Yeah, like Lampard's had a lot to deal with the last few months as well. Some of these players, I do say the board definitely takes some of the blame for this as well, because we've had a massive squad and this wouldn't be an issue if we had lowered our valuation fee on some of the players. Half the reason why these players haven't been sold is because we were buying so many players, but we also had to raise funds to get those players after we reached a certain point. And by doing that, we were trying to get high valuation fees on players, but they were just too high with the current climate. Like, I was hearing over the summer that we were trying to recoup as much as we could for Kepa's transfer fee. You must be mad if you think we're even getting a tenth of Kepa's transfer fee after that 19-20 season. But here we are
give him away.
trying to push way too much. Now, Alex, let me start with you. What's your thoughts after reading all of that?
Well, I didn't know to the severity of which, some of the rows and stuff behind the scenes. But what I will say is, I've been saying for a while that some things must be going on the training ground. I mean, you only have to look at Tomori, for instance. That guy, since about
Rudy definitely had something with him. I bet I hear that in a few weeks.
I mean, you think I was saying to you on last week about how much that guy's dropped down the pecking order. I mean, you think it's probably about this time last year when you start to see him gradually fall out of the starting lineup. So obviously he had that sort of 3-4 month spell when he was a first team regular, and then all of a sudden you're seeing him playing cup games like Hull City and Nottingham Forest, and you're just thinking, all right, cool, he's dropped down a bit. You know, maybe he's one of those sort of third choice centre backs coming for the occasional league game. Then, you look at the start of this season when he's not even on the bench for some Premier League games. And it just shows how much he's fallen, really. And the only reason as to why I think that could be is some sort of row they've had at the training ground. Because when he did play, he didn't really put a foot wrong.
Yeah, Tomori, that one was ridiculously confusing as well. But the more time I'm reading this, what was it, Lawrence? If you want to drop the link in the comment section, a lot of people are asking for it as well.
But it's behind a paywall.
Oh, it's one of them paywalls.
So much.
Cool.
If there was so much beef between Lampard and Rudiger, why did Lampard bring him back into the team?
Yeah, very good point.
What was the reason behind that?
I think no, wasn't Rudiger meant to be going on loan to Spurs at the last day, but then he pulled out because he didn't want the Chelsea fans to turn on him for playing at Tottenham for a year.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, recently, why did Lampard start playing him back-to-back games or whatever?
I don't know. Like, I've been hearing now he prefers Rudiger to Kurt Zuma, and I'm sitting there, what?
I assume they just made up in it. Like, they probably had issues and they made up. That's what I assumed. But maybe Rudiger also knew that, it's close to the end anyway, so now he was trying properly again. Who knows?
Or maybe it was the case that Lampard might have been panicking and he was trying different things out. But even in the case that he was trying different things out, I kept thinking, looking at him and saying he was trying the wrong things. Like, the midfield still looked like a bit of a mess, regardless of wherever midfield we played. We still didn't look like we had any sort of killer instinct or impact coming through there. The back four, like we said, with Rudiger coming in, it didn't add much change. If anything, I thought it made things worse. I'll be real. You've really caught me off with the fucking Rudiger news and everything. Because now I'm thinking we're gonna start hearing more news and more fallout.
No, do you want more news, Lewis? Apparently, on TalkSport, a source said that Kovacic and Rudiger went directly to the board to talk about Lampard. Just recently, Kovacic is now being.
Yeah, I said that.
Yeah, what Kovacic was
Hold on, why is everyone?
So it's all the senior players now.
Why is everyone up in a huge panic about it? This is not nothing new. Do you know what I mean? Lampard and them lot did the same thing with Scolari and AVB.
But we didn't know it was the severity of this. We didn't know it was a senior players versus youth players literally clashing.
Also with the whole Lampard doing it in their era, they were like good. They would like won stuff. They were proven players. You got fringe players going to the board here, and that seems to have an impact.
It's basically.
I'll send you another link, bro, if you want it. But go on, Monster.
It's the game, man. Unfortunately, this is today's game. This is football now. Do you know what I mean? It's a thing where at the end of the day, people are saying, "Oh, Chelsea should have thrown the deadwood and blah blah." It doesn't work like that. They tried to get rid of the deadwood, they couldn't. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Unfortunately, Lampard did have to work with what he has because that's what it is. What it is before the season starts, you try to get rid of and you try to bring in players. Once the season starts, the transfer window's over. You've got to deal with what you got. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how truthful these reports are because some of them are conflicting with like the selections and things like that. If there was such a big deal with some of these players, why were they constantly being chosen week in, week out, things like that? I don't know personally. It is a shame. It's peak. I just feel, you know what? It's just time to fucking move on, man. It's just getting long now. Do you know what I mean? It's just getting long. It's a shame what happened to Lampard, man. But we have to just move on and see what happens next now, innit?
I mean, it's upsetting the fact that this is you know what I mean? We did think about last season that all the players were all happy together. It seemed like the squad harmony was at its highest. You look at training photos, for example, everyone looks happy. There's not one sad face in training photos at Cobham. But then again, it just shows that behind closed doors is completely different. But yeah, apparently it was Kovacic and Rudiger also went to the board to complain about Lampard.
Also, another player I want to throw in as well is Kepa, because this is going to add into another thing that we were going to talk about as well. Kepa was one of a number of senior players who felt that Lampard didn't provide him with clear tactical instructions or offer sufficient support as his confidence disintegrated last season. Instead, the Athletic was reporting that was left to Petr Cech and Marina Granovskaya to try and help him through his slump, and we obviously know how that worked out. But I'm seeing a similar theme, and this is the same thing you said, Lawrence, earlier. It's the players that are playing poorly that are the players that are complaining as well. Like, comment here says it perfectly. Kovacic is complaining. Kovacic has been arse except for about 2 or 3 games this season and a couple good substitute appearances off the bench. But other than that, I think
the same is for Kepa, isn't it?
Justified. Yeah,
like the same crap. He's talking about
the worst
tactical
goalkeeper of the season in a season where we had the second least shots taken on our goal. So statistically, he was the one stinking it up. Everyone says defenses were making mistake after mistake after mistake. Then why were we not conceding so many more shots on target compared to the goals that we were conceding? It was. Can I
interject? Yeah. Can I interject? And I'm probably gonna get hate for playing devil's advocate here. Is it coincidence that maybe barring Kovacic, all these players had slumped in form under Frank Lampard compared to other managers? Is that a coincidence? Kepa was nowhere near this bad before Lampard got here.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Neither was Rudiger. Alonso, I think we all knew Alonso was shit.
Yeah, Rudiger was he was a bit iffy in 18.
No, he was
the whole back.
He was all right. He
was all right, but he was next to Luiz, and Luiz he was born with mistakes.
What do you get?
I think people overhype Rudiger so much. Like, we've got Rudiger from Roma in a time where Roma weren't anywhere near the Italian Champions League spots, if I remember correctly. Yes, he played for the German national team, but that isn't like a lot of players do, right? A lot of players that aren't that good play for the German national team. As weird as that sounds, because they're world champions and that. Not actually reigning anymore, but used to be. I just think, I mean, you make a fair point with that, But the Kepa one is still, he's talking about tactical instructions. No one was complaining about him passing the ball wrong all the time. We were complaining about him not saving shots. That's not a
That
tactical
even went
instruction.
down in 1920. I can't lie. He was poor playing out from the back.
But even that 90, even the previous season, he was. What happened? I want to know what are these? Did these players down tools or what? They were not this poor prior to when Frank Lampard came in. They were not this poor. No one can tell me they were that poor. Do you know what I mean? What happened? Where did it all go wrong? None of these guys were that bad. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know.
But you say they weren't that bad, but they weren't like. Yeah, Kepa was all right. Like they were like okay. They were good. They weren't like world beaters. They weren't amazing. Like who exactly was Kovacic? He wasn't like an amazing player. He was a good player. Kepa was a good goalkeeper. No one really knew anything about him. And same as Rudiger. Like you said before, I think Rudiger's been overhyped for us. Like I don't think he's as amazing defender as everyone says he is. He's like kind of average. So I don't think that like these players were amazing before they started to, take a slump in form. And then also like flip it. Why has their performance gone down, but all our academy players have shone? So like I don't know if it's like maybe they can't deal with the fact that these younger players are coming in and like displacing them because they are performing better. So I think that's another side to look at as well, because along with Lampard did come all these academy players as well. I don't know, like that's my devil's advocate of it anyway. Like I don't think
not many of them space. From the players we're talking about, not many of their places were being taken. So Rudiger, maybe you can say Tomori, Marcus Alonso, no one. Who else? Kepa. There was no one to take his place until we brought in Mendy. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, but we had to play fucking Caballero.
I can name more as well.
Alonso's never been a left back or a back four. Like that's just.
No, he was. He was a wing back. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Kovacic in a midfield, like Kovacic was all right, but again, like no, who was taking his place? Havertz was coming in. Like so, last season he played quite well because we didn't really have anyone else, did we? So he was playing a lot. But now, like Havertz was coming in, threatening his place. Mount was undroppable, and obviously Kante was injured, and then Kante came back. So Kovacic's playing time has like gone down. Like when the season started and we had Havertz, we had Mount, and we had Kante, you're not gonna like. No one's crying for Kovacic to get in that midfield, are they?
No.
I think what I will say on Kepa, just quickly, because Monk obviously said this earlier, I don't think you can ever blame or praise a manager for a goalkeeper's performance. All right. Yeah, I'm just replying to Monster, but oh well. I don't think a manager should ever be praised or criticized for what the goalkeeper does.
But personally, you can also blame a manager for the goalkeeper's confidence, because Kepa's also said that Lampard didn't help his. Well, it says in the Athletic that Lampard didn't help with his confidence. He relied on Petr Cech and Marina.
Yeah, but Kepa didn't make the defense confident.
Yeah.
Like the amount
of course, Kepa will say that.
Put Mendy in for 2 games, or Willy Caballero for a few games as well.
But of course, Kepa won't be happy when he's dropped, right? So
he's not going to be
you
happy.
will always see that he has certain opinions and certain views of certain situations if he's not happy. And I'm not even saying that he's necessarily wrong. I'm just saying that one, the board should take on the chin, because they told Lampard, no, you can't get Shea Given in. They told him you have to stick with Hilario. So if you want to blame anybody for the goalkeeper situation, probably blame the board, because Lampard wanted a different goalkeeper coach, but they said nah. So, for Kepa is the only one where I'm not taking the Lampard blame. The other people I agree with, but not Kepa.
Yeah,
I think we can all agree that players like Kepa, Jorginho, Marcus Alonso, like especially Kepa and Alonso, their attitude is not fit for Chelsea, in my opinion.
These are some players that could be resurrected under Tuchel. There are some players here that, for me, Jorginho could possibly be resurrected under Tuchel.
For me, a lot of these guys,
there's nothing wrong with that anyway.
They gotta go. A lot of these guys. Billy Gilmore is literally not the heir to Jorginho, but he can do everything that Jorginho can do for me. Kepa's been poor. Marcus Alonso, this is not the right league for him. I can say the same for Jorginho. A lot of these guys, their attitude is not where their ability is, in my opinion. So they think they're the big ballers, but when it comes to the reality, they're not that good, and their attitude stinks, and they shouldn't be here.
I think that's super harsh on Jorginho. I think if anyone as good attitude is Jorginho. I'm not saying he's that great, but I think
Yeah.
you can't. No one should question Jorginho's attitude. I don't think he's had a bad word to say about anyone. And Frank Lampard.
You want to talk about professionalism?
Yeah, he's been very professional, Jorginho.
Exactly like.
Oh no, I meant
Not
Giroud.
Jorginho. Like
Oh,
yeah,
Giroud
Giroud
has
and
been
Jorginho
very
are the same.
professional. The way that
And Giroud
guy's
as well.
been treated, especially last season, before Project Restart's a disgrace. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly that. And
Giroud.
it's one of the jarring things as well, because Giroud has definitely gone in the summer, and I'm low-key thinking we could have utilized this player so much more. And this is where like the fan in me is coming out a bit more, and I'm thinking we would have seen so many better moments with Olivier Giroud up front, or a better system with Olivier Giroud and Timo Werner next to him, compared to constantly bringing this guy off the bench or just not even bringing this guy on at all. Like, the only thing that I will defend is Giroud is 34 years of age. He can't play every single game. We can't try and rely on him for that. But we barely play him one game out of the 3.
No, he can't. He can't play every single game. You're right, Lewis. But it annoys me, right? Because last season, he had a case. He had a case for not getting that many minutes within the first half of the season. Because you look at the way we're playing this season compared to last season. Last season, there wasn't as much, crossing like we're doing this season. It's more, a lot more of our play was coming down the middle, actually. Especially Tammy Abraham's goals. You're playing through balls to him. When Giroud's on the pitch, I've said this countless times, it's pointless playing a through ball to him because the guy has zero pace whatsoever. Whoever's marking him, like take the West Ham game we were talking about last time, for instance, when they beat us 1-0, their two centre halves were having a field day because it's food and drink putting the ball on the floor when you're marking Giroud, because you're going to get there first every single time. Whereas this season, when you've got deliveries coming in from Reece James and Chilwell in the air, Giroud is the perfect striker to have because he can get his head on most of them. But then there's this thing, Lewis, you know about it as well, with playing different ways, almost the opposite of the sort of striker we have on the pitch, which I find sort of puzzles me because Giroud will play and we'll start playing through balls, and when you got your Tammy or your Werner playing, you're getting crosses in the air, and none of them are really getting on the end of them, to be honest with you. So with that in mind, that's what I will say, where the system, when it comes down to the system, for example, last season accommodated players like Kovacic perfectly, and even Werner to some degree. If we were playing the same sort of system we were last season, I think Werner would be doing a lot better than he's doing.
This is an interesting point on last season. I just want to get you guys' thought. Last season was a manifestation on the Vestiges of Sarri ball. We even dominated City in their home. This season was more Lampard's team built in his own image. Now, I've seen this happen with certain sides where they play a season after being in one team style of play, and you can still see little hints of that same style of play in their play on the pitch as well. Do you think that was the case for last season, where I'm not going to say we're still relying on last season's tactics, because we were still trying to understand them towards the end of the first season? But do you think that this quote even makes any sense, or do you think it's just a waffle?
Yeah, of course it does. Just watch early games last season. We was playing Sarri ball all over the shop.
Yeah. And then he also went to 3 at the back sometimes, which is some glimpses of Conte, because, obviously he wanted to get the best of it. It was purely because of Alonso, apparently. Literally the reason why. When you see Wolves when we won 5-2, why he went 3 at the back there. It looks like he was just kind of like not copying, but he was taking some glimpses from Sarri and Conte.
To be fair, even the youth teams play 3 at the back a lot, so it made sense for a lot of them.
But that's the point I've been trying to make for ages, right? That Wolves game when we beat them 5-2, and he's tried something different with the 3 at the back, is a prime example of him literally changing it up or adapting his game to suit certain players. We haven't seen that this season. We all know Alonso can't play in a back 4. So as a left back, the guy is poor, but put him in the left wing back role and suddenly he looks better. It's the same if you, for example, let's no, of course not. But let's say we played the 4-2-3-1 this season, for example. I guarantee if Havertz was playing in that sort of number 10 advanced midfield role, you'd see a lot better of him than playing in a 4-3-3 system. That's what I think a lot of it boils down to as well. His you know, him not wanting to change it up this season, because he's gone with the same 4-3-3 countless times. And it's just not working. We keep getting outrun in midfield, and it happens every single game.
For me, I think I don't know if anyone pointed to this, but to me, over the past 2 seasons, it's been clearly evident that Lampard does have his favourites. So maybe that may have caused the rift between the, say for example, the senior players and Lampard, or the senior players and the youth, because Lampard persistently picks there's certain players in the team, and we all know who I'm talking about.
But tell me one manager that doesn't have those. I'm sorry to interrupt. Like, every manager will have favorites. Like, just like you as a fan have favorites. Like, isn't that totally?
Yeah, we all have our favorites.
You know, the guys that work hard on training, you'll prefer, like, and that you feel like will back you and do what you ask them to do. So if you play those players, okay, some fans might have their opinion that certain players didn't do well, but at the end of the day, it's still Frank's decision. So if he thinks they play well and he'll pick them, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Not saying that he did the right thing all the time, but I still think that part is somewhat understandable. Don't you guys? Like, I think it's fair to have favorites.
Also,
every manager has favorites. Like, that's the one I want to hold on to. Go on.
So I was just saying, the players who probably felt like that, like, you know, the Kovacic's and the Rudiger, like, I don't think they deserve to be, like they didn't really have any reason to complain, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
They've got nothing to justify it as well. Like, the fact is, every manager does have their favorites. It's all about being. You still need to be able to, like, take your goggles off and know when a player's in bad form or not. Now, I think with Lampard, there were times where he could notice it instantly. Like, I think there was times he was very ruthless, like with Kepa, for example. But then there's also times where he's just shoehorning too many of the wrong players in, like playing Mason Mount on the left wing for ages, Timo Werner on the left wing for ages. We've said for so long over the last month how much we're sick of that. Also, thank God that we never have to see that again. One thing I do want to talk about stubbornness, though, and there's one talking point we haven't mentioned yet. I think this is going to be the last part of the athletic thread that we will talk about. Declan Rice. Frank Lampard was really, really, and when I say really, it's the point where he was annoying the board with it. He really wanted us to push for Declan Rice. The plan wasn't just to acquire Rice. Like we already said previously, Lampard wanted to use him as both a centre-back and a centre defensive midfielder. But he also wanted to buy James Tarkowski from Burnley. But the board weren't all for it. Main reason for it was the price tag. I think if it was half the price, they might have been interested in it, or they might have warmed to it. But they were not willing to spend 80 million on a ex-Chelsea academy player, because they thought that would just be terrible business from their part. And the Athletic were told in December that Lampard needs to stop pushing for Rice or he'll lose his job. The hierarchy are very wary about the potential embarrassment of buying back an academy reject at a huge expense. And when we talk about favourites, this turns it back into the other way. And we're saying, was Lampard just simply too stubborn in his ways as well? Because there were rumours that we were in for Thomas Partey towards the end of deadline day, but that didn't really come across because he didn't fit the perfect Lampard mould of a DM. He was more looking for someone who's more of a sitter, whereas Thomas Partey is a bit more of a box-to-box player than Declan Rice is. There's also plenty of other defensive midfielders that we could have gone for. We've spoken for ages about players like Zakaria, players like Bakarari Sumari, or I hope I pronounced his name wrong. I probably butchered that. But the point still stands. There were plenty of other defensive midfield options we could have gone for, and we didn't go for it. Alex, I'm going to go to you on this one. Declan Rice, worth the struggle? And also, is this just another example of Frank Lampard's stubbornness as a manager?
Yeah, possibly, Lewis. But as a manager, you're always going to want a player. You're always going to want a particular player, you know. But what I will say with regards to him and trying to pursue Rice, you know, at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is we spent £200 million. Yes, there may be some areas you don't address as much as you would like in a particular window. But let's take Hasenhüttl at Southampton, for example, right? Take a look at their defence. Their two centre halves are Jan Bednarek and Jack Stevens. You cannot sit there and honestly tell me that when he goes to a club like Southampton, oh, those are the two centre halves I definitely want. Of course, you want better centre halves. Midfield. When Højbjerg went to Spurs, of course you want someone that sort of calibre, or maybe even better. But sometimes you have got to work with what you've got. And if you don't have like a Rice to play in a certain position, then you can change the formation around, for the time being, just to accommodate the rest of the team, so we look more stable. For example, yes, you want Rice, but if you look at it, if let's say you did the double pivot, which is what we're all talking about each week, suddenly we look a lot more solid. Yes, in the long run, you may still want Rice, but there's things you can do over sort of 3, 4, 5 month period that you can do just to steady the ship for a bit. And then, come the summer transfer window, this is if he was still in the job, then you can say, you know what? Yeah, now I want Rice. I've had to put up with this for a long time. I've done this to accommodate the rest of the team, but it's very clear we need a player like Declan Rice. But at the end of the day, that's what management's all about. You're not always going to get the players you want, but you've got to adapt, and it's all about game management. Yes, you may want a particular player, but there's things you can do. You can alter the formation, put a certain player somewhere, and all of a sudden you look more stable again. And that's what I think it comes down to.
Exactly that. But when we're speaking about defensive midfielders, I'm hearing the people in the comment section talk about already, we have options in ourselves that we could have tried to utilize if we wanted to. Ethan Ampadu could have been a decent option. We could have pushed Kurt Zuma or Andreas Christensen into a DM role in a pivot. I think that could have worked out as well. But it's the constant persistence of Declan Rice. And then we spent most of the season saying that we don't have a natural DM. Even in the 17-game unbeaten run, I was saying, cool, we're playing well, but we still don't have a natural DM. We're playing players like, we're playing N'Golo Kante in the lone DM role, and that's cool, but we're playing teams that sit deep against us. We were talking about the Man City game as a real test. And if N'Golo Kante passed that test, maybe we do have someone that could be in a DM role. But it's clear that N'Golo Kante is still assimilating and still understanding the role as a lone DM player, which is why he got massively exposed. I'm not going to say I'm not going to use it as an excuse to blame the transfer window or anything like that. Even if it wasn't Frank Lampard's transfers, it's one of the best transfer windows that we've had in years. But we can see how much we've struggled without having a natural DM in the side.
Yeah, and that is true. Like we do need a natural DM. Whether Lampard should have consistently persisted for Rice, Rice is good, but is he that incredible? I mean, Ben Glander seems to think so. Fair enough, but is he that incredible that no one else can be on the same level that probably is a lot cheaper and also saves the board the embarrassment of, signing a player for 50, 60, 70, 80 million that we got rid of as a teenager from the academy? And that's probably where it came from. Like, the Lampard needs to be smart in these decisions. Like, it makes total sense that the board don't really want to spend this much money on a player we got rid of when he was 16. Like, that is an understandable decision from the board that they don't want that. But also, obviously, what we don't know is, did they give him an alternative option? That's kind of that's what we don't know. If they said, no, you can't have Rice because so and so, but we could try and get Zakaria either in January or next summer. If they did that and he said nah, then he's an idiot. If they didn't give him like an alternative, then I understand why he's like, well, you want me to win, you want me to do things. Top 4 isn't good enough, as Matt Law said in the Telegraph article. But then you're not giving me one of the biggest players that I need. And you made a fair point. I think it was Alex. Saying like adjust the formation and everything. I guess Frank was probably thinking, okay, if I go more defensive, I don't think we'll score enough goals to get me where I need to go. And if we play more aggressive, we won't defend well enough to get us where we need to go. So I guess he was stuck in a problematic situation. I know I'm sitting here sounding like getting all these excuses for Frank. It's just that I think, as much like I said this multiple times on my channel, Matisse's channel, and on here as well, I think we had to get rid of Frank at this point. Maybe we should have even done it after Man City. But that doesn't mean that players and the board haven't also made mistakes. Sadly, we're not going to sack the board because they are the board. They're not going to sack themselves. And we can't exactly get rid of every player all at once. Hence why football is the way it works. And, we have to kind of accept that the manager will always take more blame than anybody else. And now, sorry, guys, I kind of have to dip. So, thank you for having me.
Cool. We're near at the point we're going to wrap up. But Lawrence, thank you for jumping on. Everyone, hit the like and subscribe button to Lawrence's channel. Link is in the description below. Literally just click his name and it's as simple as that. Lawrence, thank you for jumping on, bro. Massively appreciated.
And subscribe to
Can I
Lewis as
just
well.
make- oh, sorry.
I'm sure there's 1,000 people and not all of you are sub to Lewis. So subscribe to him right now.
Yes, please. Thank you, Loz. Take care, man. Have a good day.
Cheers, boys.
Big ups, Lawrence.
Right,
Can I just
Ryan.
make a
To
last
be
point?
honest,
Because I've
I
got
don't
this as
think
well.
we
Sorry.
haven't heard a lot from you today, so let me know your thoughts.
On what?
Everything you've heard today, because I actually don't think we've even turned to you on this stream the whole time. So there's a lot to take in. There's a lot of new information that's just come out over the last hour and a half of us streaming. But yo, chat to me, man. What are your thoughts?
First of all, with Lampard sacking, what's it called? After he didn't get sacked against what was it, Leicester? I thought the
Yeah.
board were just planning to give him a lot more time. But I understand why they sacked him, and I'm not against it, but I'm just kind of accept it. I get why they done it, and I think it was the right decision because I just feel like the players weren't playing for him anymore. The key players weren't playing for him anymore. I think there was maybe Mason Mount there, but other than that, I don't see anyone fighting for the manager. So I don't think there was any way back from what we were doing. Like, I don't think it was just a bad patch of form. I think he just lost the dressing room. And when sorry about that. But when you lose the dressing room, it's hard to get it back. And especially when you lose like big players in that dressing room. Like if he's got problems with Antonio Rudiger, sure, he might not be the best player on the pitch, but I know for a fact in that dressing room he has a big influence. So yeah, I think that's why he got sacked, and I don't think the performances were gonna get any better. And yeah, I don't think the board wanted to risk top four. I think they wanted a title challenge minimum, but I think everyone was willing to lower that standard to just top four because of no preseason, gelling the players in, freak season, you know what I mean? So I get it, but I didn't think we were gonna get top four with Lampard, hence why he had to get sacked. Tuchel, I'm not gonna write him off. I'm not gonna say he's the next best thing because I don't know too much about him. But I think he's got good tactics. I heard that he changes his tactics based on the opponents we have. So hopefully we're not too predictable. My only little critic of him is the board, because he had problems with the board, I think, at Dortmund and PSG. Not something I'm going to hold him against for, but it's something to take in mind. So hopefully he doesn't fall out with the board here, because if he does, what's his name? Roman won't hesitate to sack him. But yeah, Lampard hasn't helped and stuff. I mean, constantly playing players out of position, like Pulisic on the right wing, Werner on the left wing, Havertz as a centre mid, Kante as a CDM.
Hey, Tyrese, man. You get a drink and sit down because you've missed a lot today, man. Honestly. Go on, bro.
But like he hasn't helped himself. Like, first of all, he's constantly played players out of position. He's played Pulisic on the right wing at times and Werner on the left wing, Mount on the left wing when he's had other options. His man management hasn't been good. The way he dealt with Tomori, basically trying to force him out of the club, with a buy option as well, which I didn't agree with. Like, I get the loan, but why put a buy option in there? And if you don't want to, if Milan was stubborn,
That wasn't him.
that
That wasn't him though. That wasn't him with the
Oh,
buy
okay.
option.
Sorry, I take that back. But I think the way he dealt with Tomori wasn't good. And yeah, overall, he just hasn't helped himself, and he's kind of thrown some of the players under the bus in his press conferences. And that's just going to ruin the players' confidence and just what's his name? Just like make them not want to play for him even more. And yeah, I think Lampard has that sort of arrogance and ego about him that I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer don't. That's why Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had a rough patch. He has rough patches, but you can see him getting back from him. Like, he's always that one game away from the sack. But that one game, his players turn up for him. He gets it right because the players want to play for him. Because he doesn't have an ego. He doesn't have an ego like that. He's basically friends with the players, so the players will play for him. But with Lampard, he has that sort of ego and arrogance. So that can be good, but it can also backfire against you. Like, there's no guarantee it's gonna come good. So yeah, I agree with the sacking. Tuchel, I get it. I would have liked an interim, but I get why they don't get an interim. Because if you get an interim, you need like immediate reaction out of these players to salvage top four. And I think with an interim, the players would be like, "Oh, it's just an interim. We don't have to really play for him because we know in a couple of months he's out." But with Tuchel, it's like he's here for at least until next season. That's a given. So the players are gonna be like, we need to really pattern up now. So I get why I think Tuchel was the best option if we were gonna sack Lampard now. And yeah, I get why he got sacked. Big up Ben, man. I can take the banter. But yeah, big up CFC Somali so as well. But yeah, he hasn't helped himself. I think it was the right decision. And yeah, the only critic I had was he probably should have got sacked after the Leicester game. So what's his name? Tuchel would have came in and what's it called? Got that Luton game and then the Wolves game and then the Burnley game. So that Luton game would be kind of like an exhibition match. You know what I mean? So yeah. But I get it why. I think it's because he had to quarantine and stuff. So I get it. But yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Alex, I want to move into this point before we wrap up the stream, and I want us to talk about the way the club has moved, not just since the Lampard sacking, but let's talk about the last few weeks before then, because we're speaking about Lampard, and now with all the news coming around about the senior players falling out with some of the youth players in the squad, a lot of decisions within the starting lineups are now starting to make sense. Why did we not see Billy Gilmore for so many games where we wanted to see him, but we were stuck with Jorginho playing games when Jorginho was one of the players they was trying to get rid of? Why is Antonio Rudiger suddenly getting back into the starting lineup and Tomori's going back on loan when initially Rudiger was one of the first names on Lampard's list to leave? So now I'm thinking, are the boards now starting to get more involved with some of the decisions in terms of the starting lineup and everything? This is all speculation, but you put some of the stories together, you start to fit in an even bigger story as a result of that. And it's looking like the board are now starting to fiddle with the manager's instructions again and again. And it's led to this with Lampard being sacked. And as well as that, rumours coming out that Lampard wasn't even given the opportunity to say his goodbyes to the team today, wasn't even let into the training ground. What are your thoughts on the last few weeks in terms of starting lineups? And do you think there's any changes in terms of your thoughts on Lampard's decision, because it might not have even been his anymore? And what are your thoughts on the way the ball's moved since with Frank Lampard's sacking?
Yeah, obviously within the last few weeks, results haven't been great at all. I mean, we've picked up 4 points in the last 5 games or something like that. I think we've only picked up 7 points in our last 8 Premier League games. So yeah, obviously, all of us haven't really been too content with the lineup. But you do look at it and say, were the board pressuring him into sort of maybe giving Werner ample chance? And maybe that does sort of support the fact that maybe he wasn't a Lampard signing. That would make sense. But then you look at it and go, if Havertz wasn't his signing either, then how comes he hasn't been chucked in as much as, say, a Werner has, when both of them aren't his signings? And I don't know, man. It's like I said to you before, it's tough being a Chelsea manager. We know this, and obviously as fans, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. We can only look at it from a fan's perspective and what happens on the pitch. So yeah, there's always going to be stuff that us fans don't know about that happens in the training ground or in the dressing room or whatnot. But some of the games where maybe we haven't seen a lineup we would have liked, the quality is still there to beat some of the teams we haven't picked up the points against. Like, come on, no one can seriously tell me, like, when we lost to Wolves at the Molineux 2-1, that the team we put out wasn't strong enough. No matter whether it's the lineup we wanted or not, we've got much more quality than they have. I mean,
with Wolves' form, I agree with you.
But exactly. But this is what I'm saying. Jimenez is their best player, and I'll debate anyone over this, right? He's, when he's out, they don't really have a goal threat. Let's be honest. Yeah, you have your tricky players like your Netos and your Podence. Cool, but they don't really have a goal threat as such, right? With the quality we had out on that pitch and the quality they had, we should still be beating them. So games like that, it almost doesn't matter who you put out, because our quality is superior to the likes of Wolves. You can even say that about Fulham. Obviously, we're going to have our reservations if players on form that we like, such as Hudson-Odoi, aren't really getting a chance. But when you look at some of the teams who we've actually dropped points against, i.e. your Wolves, and you're Fulham, then no matter who the starting 11 is, we still should be good enough to beat these teams.
Can I
Yes,
just quickly
And
just
that's
throw
where
this
game
point before I
management
put
comes.
it
Go on.
So it's just about just one thing you said about he wasn't allowed to say goodbye to the players. Wasn't there a thing though that he thanked all the players after Luton, and that's one of the reasons why he made Mason Mount captain, because I think he knew it was over for him. But also just in terms of when you say, I think I mentioned this in the last stream when you just said that we've got the quality of the players, and I think this is also links to Rice. I'm not saying Rice is the one to get, but I just think we need a commander on the pitch, and I think that's why Lampard was pushing for Rice, because he had Premier League experience. He was young enough to be in that position for going forward, but I think his main attribute that he wanted was someone that would boss everyone around on the pitch. And I know we spent all this money, and I don't care who it is, but I think we need to get a leader on the pitch, because we don't have one. All the successful teams have a really vocal leader. We don't have one of those, and that's the only thing I could.
Thiago is a leader.
No. So Thiago is a leader, but he's 34. He's not going to be at the club for long, and also he's just coming to the team. Do you see what I mean? Lampard is probably looking at Rice as someone that's going to be a leader, in terms of next Terry, how long he was there for, longevity. Do you see what I mean? And I don't know. You tell me. When you watch the games, do you really see Thiago pointing at people, yelling at players where to go? I know he does it with Zuma and the back line, but I'm not seeing.
I think it's more of a case of he just calms the team down and it's just composure. I don't see him shouting at players, but it's just his natural presence as a
that might be
leader himself.
thing where he's not really a shouter, but that still doesn't mean you're not as much of a leader. You don't have to be vocal like that, but you still need to be able to communicate.
But bro, with this point that he's making about a leader and whatnot, not to be that guy or anything, but how much money did we spend this summer? And Frank Lampard's still asking for another 80 million. From a board's perspective, and I 100% agree with the board, it'll be way more cost efficient to get rid of this manager and getting another manager who can get a tune out of the players that we have, because we've got an amazing squad. There's no need for another extra million, 80 million for Rice and whatnot. Understand?
I know, but I also want to move on to Jordan's point. I was talking about selective outrage. It could be one for the play. We talk about the manager, and we've been outraged at some of his decisions. We also need to talk about the players and the way some of the players have moved as well, because the players haven't helped him in any way. If anything, they've made this job harder.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been on Twitter and it looks like everyone's now turning on the likes of Rudiger, Kepa. It's getting quite toxic, actually.
Can I just say as well, sorry to interrupt, imagine we were in grounds still. Do you know how toxic Wolves would be?
But remember after Mourinho got sacked? You
don't think that game was bad. Rudiger would be putting a spliff. Werner would be putting a spliff. Fucking Jorginho would be putting a spliff. Kovacic would be putting a spliff. Werner, they'd be getting at him for the amount of misses he was doing per game. I'm thinking as a fan base, not even to try and justify him, he would be getting a lot of stick in that Wolves game just based off his performances.
If this is true, then these players need to go, because all right, okay, we know Lampard isn't the greatest of managers and he's got a lot wrong in his time, but then again, that doesn't help at all. The players turn around. He needs the players' support at the end of the day, and it is the players who have been frozen out the sides who thought, all right, let's kick up a fuss, you know what I mean, and cause disruption at Cobham. It is disgusting. It is really disgusting. And I mean, no offense to Rudiger or anything, but he is a bang average player. Yet he feels the need to walk around like he's the dog's bollocks at Cobham. Who is he to go around? Rubbish footballer. So is Jorginho. If this is true, they're walking around like caught kicking a fuss. Get out of the club, because these are bang average players. You cannot play for. I'll call Rudiger out on here. I'll hope he watches this, because if he watches this, I will say, Rudiger, you're a rubbish footballer. You do not deserve to be at Chelsea. Please leave the club.
Here's the thing. We'll talk about them as players, and the jarring thing is the mentality. And we'll say these players need to leave and these players need to leave. I'm sure we said the exact same thing in 2015, didn't we? After Jose Mourinho got sacked. And I know the only players that are still here from 15-16, Azpilicueta, who else do we have that's
Zuma.
still here? Zuma's still here. And Zuma was one of the better players in the squad that season too. All the strikers have changed. The midfield has basically changed as well. So we're only looking at about 2 players, or maybe a few else that I'm missing. They'll let me know in the comment section as well. But only 2 players have stayed. Yet we're still hearing the same problem where we're saying player power is running rampant at the club, and now we're saying we need to get rid of players again. Maybe the situation and the problem might be a bit deeper than just the players, because we're with a completely different crop of the squad and we're getting the same results still. The players are running the show.
Yeah, but Lewis, the thing is, right, with player power, we saw it under Mourinho. The player power was like, at least these players they had a bit of quality about them, you know, with your Hazards, your Costas, you know, these were quality players we were talking about. Now we have bang average players who are turning on the manager, causing a massive fuss. What right do they have? What right do they have as these sort of players to kick up a fuss?
I get what you mean.
I get if a better manager was struggling with these. Like, for example, Maurizio Sarri, I was done at that point as well, and I was saying get rid of all the players because it was the same problem that we had with Conte. But Sarri was an experienced manager, so I can stand behind him and say, get behind the manager and bin off anyone else who doesn't agree with him. Lampard, I can't say that with because he has no experience. We had an inexperienced manager with this squad, so if anything, it was easy for them to run around him.
Yeah, that's what I think. Like, all of these players, right?
Was on loan in 15-16 as well, so I wouldn't really.
Was that
a lot of these players that play for the club right now, right? They see Lampard as an amazing player. They idolize him growing up and whatnot. But at the end of the day, Lampard's still a novice when it comes to the managerial thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
it's only so many. It's only so many games before they judge him on a managerial basis. Like, I can tell the players respected him when they came in. Like Thiago Silva, Havertz, Werner. They're all probably not Thiago Silva. The rest of the players, they all probably looked up to him and admired him as a player. But after so many games, like the player side will come out and be like, "Yo, what's this guy done as a manager?" You know what I mean? Like, for the first couple of games, I'll be like, "Oh, I've got respect from this Frank Lampard." But after so many games, that not respect, but it's gonna run out, and they're gonna judge him on a managerial basis.
Yeah, but do you think? But the players that are complaining, though, I don't think that any of the ones that are complaining. I don't think Jorginho complained because I think he's professional. But the ones that were kicking up the most fuss, I don't think they weren't the ones. They weren't playing anyway. Like, this is what Adam was saying. I think I alluded to it before. These are like the mediocre players that haven't earned their spots in the team. Like, when I look at this thing, like Werner, although he's not scoring, he still does a lot of running. Tammy's all for Lampard. Hudson-Odoi is all. By the way, I'm not saying Lampard should stay. I'm just saying, if you go around the team and look, I can't really think of players who weren't really playing for Lampard other than the ones that weren't in the team. Like, the form was just bad. The tactics weren't great. I get that. But I think all the players that were on the pitch were like playing for Lampard.
No, I get what you mean. But now we got to talk about how Lampard judges his lot of training, because all I'm hearing is this guy didn't run enough. Didn't Frank Lampard talk about how Kai Havertz is not running enough when he's playing in the 8? Do you get what I'm saying? So, like, players like Kovacic, who are technically good at football, are losing their spots to players that run a lot. It doesn't make sense at the end of the day.
Kovacic was also one of the players. We want to it goes in both ways. It goes in both different ways. Where I'm now looking at Lampard's interviews as well as a manager, and I'm sitting there thinking, I know there's some where he specifically went after Timo Werner, and I don't rate that. But there's some where he's indirectly going after members of the squad, and I'm looking at, and he could just be going at the same players in the squad that he was forced to play himself. Some of the quotes he was saying could easily be translated to being at Antonio Rudiger or at Mateo Kovacic or at Jorginho potentially. So now here's the thing: these rumors have thrown everything up in the air, because now I'm starting to think, how much did Lampard really have to deal with as a manager? Because before all of this, yesterday, I would have thought most of the players were on side with him. Maybe he's got a couple of the fringe players against him, but we know that, and it's already as a cost of having such a massive squad. Now I'm thinking, this guy basically had to deal with half of the senior players on his ass, and the only people bailing him out were the youth players.
Yeah. I think, like, before you asked about the transfers, I don't think any of them were his apart from Chilwell. And I think that also does kind of make sense, because they would have planned to have bought these players like before, like Havertz maybe the exception because he came on, it was like understandable we could get him in the summer. But I think they would have planned to have bought these players at the same time thinking Lampard was only going to be there for the year. I think Lampard probably helped recruit them because the board were probably like, hey, we can get, we're going after this player, can you help out? And Lampard then probably would have been like, yeah, that's cool. Like, I like this player, because like the board went to Lampard, said, we're probably going to get this player, help us out. And then Lampard's like, yeah, Werner's good. Yeah, Havertz is good. Yeah, I'll help him out. They probably weren't ones that Lampard probably thought about, but that doesn't mean he didn't like want them, if that kind of makes sense. I think Chilwell was the only one he really wanted, and we know like he wanted Rice and I can't say his name, Tarski or whatever. But yeah, I think it's there's so much that goes on behind the scene. That's why I think like there's blame. It's not just solely one person's shoulder. It's some of the players, it's Lampard, and it's a bit going on behind the scenes as well. But I think when you look at what was released now with the Athletic, you can probably say it's the same every single time we've had to let go of any manager, regardless of their experience. I think they've all had to deal with the same thing.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to have to deal with this long-term thing of I do think a project is still going to come, but it's going to have to be with a manager that has more experience and a manager that we can actually get behind, because with Lampard, it just wasn't going to work like that. Final thoughts. We're going to go to Alex and then we'll go around the rest of the panel. Alex, chat to me, man.
What do you want me to talk about?
Just final thoughts based on everything we've spoken about.
Listen, man. Well, to me, it's just sort of.
It's a lot to take in. I get it.
Yeah, like I said earlier, we as fans only look at it from the perspective of what goes on the pitch and, you know, lineups and results and whatnot. We don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes. So that's one thing, you know, everyone sort of that this situation's shown, that is we don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes. So maybe sometimes as fans we can be, you know, quick to judge. But, you know, ultimately this being a Chelsea manager, we know what sort of position it is. Lampard knows what sort of position it is. It's, you know, it's a cutthroat position, man. It's just you never really, if you're not producing, like someone summed it up perfectly earlier. In the last 15 years or so, right, we've been really successful. We're not just going to become generously unsuccessful, you know, because we had Frank Lampard at the helm. You know, that's just how it is. But you know, I don't want to be too hasty in saying Tuchel's going to have the issues, but you do look at it and what's happened at his previous clubs, and you have got to ask yourself, you know, will this player power issue and all this stuff behind the scenes not happen with Tuchel, who's got a track record of falling out with a board and particular players? But oh man, we'll just have to see what happens. Really, it's all a mess. It's all a mess, Lewis. That's all I can say on the matter.
Yeah, we are a mess, but the good thing is the solution is coming soon, and it's a new manager that can get a system that gets the best out of these players. Mike, give me your final thoughts, mate.
Yeah, it is a mess, but you know, it's our mess. We've obviously got to support whatever happens. The one thing that as all of this has come to light in terms of everything that's gone on with the players and behind the scenes, I am concerned that, you know, we do have a more experienced manager, great, but because again we've still got that same issue of players are going to be left out, and now you're thinking, is he going to sacrifice the youth players who have been playing better than the seasoned players to keep the senior players on side? So I still think that we're going to have that. There's still going to be some like power dynamic struggle going on, and he has a history, hasn't he, of like getting on top of players, calling out players, and things like kind of that. So I think it was said before, it's going to be another cycle, I reckon, of the 2-year thing, mainly because of what's happened with him before. But I fully support him. I hope we do well. I hope we get the bounce back. But my honest prediction of where we'll finish, I don't think we'll get top 4 this season. I just can't see it happening. I think
even with 5 points from 4th. I mean, granted, with the other teams that have games in hand and everything, but there's still a chance.
In my mind, here's how I see it: top 3, United, Liverpool,
yeah, I am
City.
Dan. I'm gonna have to block you for that one. I can't lie. That can't run. Go on.
Yeah, so top 3, United. So top 3, like
the racial abuse. We ain't running with that.
Yeah,
I know.
On that. See you later, mate. So top 3 in no particular order, by the way: City, United, Liverpool. I still think Liverpool will somehow regain form. Then you got that 4th place spot. And I'm looking at like Leicester. Like, even if we get a manager together, just the squad they've played in the system for multiple years, they're just a lot more solid. So I feel like Leicester have a better chance of nicking that top 4 spot than we do, because we're still a team in flux. We still don't even know our starting 11. Leicester are set. They know what they're going to do. Do you see what I mean? So yeah, I think 5-6. I always said 5-6 from the beginning of the season, to be fair, just because of the amount of changes. So I'm sticking with my prediction, basically. I just hope we get out of the slump. I hope he can bring some confidence to the younger players. I know he worked with Werner before, Peter Six, so I'm hoping like we do get an improvement, but I don't think we'll get top 4. I just hope I'm proven wrong. I hope I'm proven wrong, but those are my reasons why.
Okay, I can accept. I can understand that. Ryan, we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Cos for the final thoughts. Go on.
With Tuchel, I hope we get the manager bounce. I predict we will, but I don't even want to say too much on him. Like I said what I said. He's got a history of falling out with the board, but that could change. Stuff changes. He changes tactics on the opponent. So yeah. Other than that, I'm not gonna say he's the next coming of Sir Alex Ferguson, but I'm not gonna say he's a terrible manager and write him off. I'm just gonna see what happens. I'm gonna see the Wolves game, see the Burnley games. I think the Spurs game will probably be the first big test for him. And then onwards from there, I think there's a Newcastle game and some other easy games to get momentum from. But yeah, I'm gonna see with Tuchel. Yeah, let's hope for the best. I think we can still get top 4, but it's all about the manager bounce we get from Tuchel and how the players respond from Tuchel. Because if they have the same attitude with Lampard, like we don't like this guy, we're not going to play for him, then there's no way we're getting top 4. I don't even think we're going to get top 6. But if Tuchel really gets into their players' heads, like this is time to work, something needs to change, and the players react as well, then yeah, I think we'll get top 4. But yeah, Lampard, he's done good for Chelsea. I think we sacked him before it was gonna get ugly, because people saying we should have kept him until the end of the season. I mean, if we kept him until the end of the season and nothing changed, which I think would have happened because the play, he just lost the players, it would have looked ugly. People would have even probably held that against his player career, which no one should, but it was going to eventually if he stayed there for so long.
Yeah.
And people would have been like Lampard out, and it would have got so toxic. That people would just remember Lampard as the manager, not the great player he was, and arguably our best ever player. So I think Lampard left before it got ugly. And yeah, he brought in good players from the youth team like Reece James, who I'm sure is going to get a lot of game time. Mount, who I'm still sure will get a lot of game time. Gilmore, who I hope will develop under Tuchel, and Abraham, who will get game time, maybe not as much, but I think he still will get game time. Timo Werner and Kai Havertz, I think Tuchel can still do something with them. And yeah, Lampard had a good reign, and yeah, I think we're going to see him again. Like, we sack managers every 3 seasons, so I think he just needs some experience, and hopefully we'll see him again.
Exactly that. Cos, we'll go to you for the final thoughts, man.
Yeah, man. I'm quite optimistic actually. I'm gonna be real because it looks like we're gonna see some sort of style of play which might be somewhat effective. You know what I'm saying? Against Wolves, though, it might be a write-off. You know what I'm saying? We can't expect too much from him in his first game. But in terms of the board now, I definitely think we're going for that long-term approach. I'm not sure if Tuchel's the guy, but he might be. I think that initially we're going to go with Lampard, but obviously we could see he didn't have no set style of play and it wasn't effective. And then eventually the players saw that and didn't start playing for him. So maybe I think Tuchel might be the guy because he is not young, but he's still quite young in the terms of the managerial sense. He has a progressive play, style of play. Do you know what I'm saying? He's won stuff in France. He got to the Champions League final. And obviously, he can probably get the most out of these German players that we have. So all in all, I'm quite optimistic. Actually, I think Frank's his time was done a long time ago. I mean, Villa, West Ham, those poor performances, but he overstayed, and now we've got him out. So I think we need to get behind Tuchel as a manager, because obviously we can see that he does have a set style of play, and he brings in the youth, and he's quite a progressive manager. So yeah, man, I'm quite excited.
Can I say one more thing, Lewis?
Yeah, go for it.
I want to say 2 things in it. The first thing is people need to stop not disrespecting Frank Lampard, but just put a bit of respect. Like he's out of his depth. He's not Chelsea level yet. But that's mainly just because of his inexperience. And he done well in his first season. He got top 4. He might have scraped it, but he got it for us. He got good players who I'm sure will thrive under Tuchel and play regularly, like your Reece James, your Gilmores, your Mounts, even your Hudson-Odois, all of them players. And he got good players for Tuchel to work with. So people are acting like it's been a disaster class. This season hasn't been good enough, but you don't have to disrespect him. Like, he's been decent for us. And he's not a terrible coach as well. Like, he's maybe what's it called? He's not Chelsea level yet, mainly because of his inexperience. But he's still a half decent coach who I think can still get another job, maybe in a higher championship or the lower Premier League or even abroad to develop his game. And second thing I want to say is stop writing off Tuchel, people. Like, if you have your reservations about it, fair play. If you think he's the next coming of thing, if you think he's gonna do well, fair play. But just don't write him off. Like, you haven't seen one player. You haven't seen him play the Wolves game. Like, you haven't even seen him play one game. You don't know how it's gonna be yet. So people writing him off already, saying, he's not gonna be good for us. Just give him a chance, man. Back him until the end of the season. Then make your opinions. I'm sure he's gonna get the next season as well. So yeah, those are the two things I want to say. Respect Lampard for what he did at Chelsea as a manager, and just give Tuchel time. Don't write him off.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
Guys,
I echo that.
Go on. Oh, just want to echo that.
Yeah, that's it, man.
All right, cool. Well, guys, this has been a very, very mind-opening live stream. I've actually really enjoyed this one. I'm glad I did this. Pick up the panel, everyone who's jumped on. I'll drop the Twitter links to you guys in the description below afterwards. But Ryan, the link to his channel, Lawrence, Monster, and Worldwide Chelsea channel are all in the description below. Guys, I hope you lot enjoyed this stream. I hope it's been as mind-opening for you guys as it has been for me. Until tomorrow or later tonight, if there's any more news, I'll see you lot for the next stream sometime within the next 12 to 24 hours. But until then, you lot, take care. And yeah, just take care, because it's been a massive 24 hours for everyone. Take care and peace.